I wasn't even recording the whole time.
Are you serious?
Oh my god. It's too early to set up camp. But once we What's up everybody, Toast and Ajax here. Welcome back to the channel. I wanted to do a follow-up video on my second backpacking trip and all the things I learned. I know we all kind of go down a YouTube rabbit hole and watch the same people. You got the Dan Beckers of the world, and Kyle hates that guy, it's hilarious. But this isn't much of like a gear video, more of a experience into this hobby and kind of what I learned as I go along. I will tell you what though, if you do want a good gear up video and things you shouldn't buy, I wish I watched this or found this guy before, check out the channel Back to Outdoors. I'll put his link right here for you. I came across this guy and he's got some really good stories, and he had this gear up video and all the stupid stuff that you could buy, and I wish I would have watched his video because I definitely did the same mistakes. So I would check that out if you're looking for more of a gear video. So with that, let me tell you about my second backpacking trip experience. So one of the things that I did better on this backpacking trip compared to my first Appalachian Trail backpack trip a few months back was that I hydrated the day before and that morning before. I drank a lot of water. I knew this trail that we were doing wasn't gonna have any water sources, so I had to make sure that I brought enough water with me to last. And as well, I was just hydrated before, that way I wasn't over drinking on the trail. This time I decided not to pack my bladder because I've been watching all these videos and I was always afraid that it would freeze or break and then bust inside the bag, and then I'd have wet clothes and a wet sleeping bag and it would just ruin the whole trip. So I avoided, and I kind of want to get into this habit of not bringing my water bladder just to avoid that type of situation. And this time I brought two different types of water bottles with me. I brought with me a 1 liter Smart water bottle, 500 milliliter water container from REI, this micro light. This thing's really cool. I pretty much use this on my second morning there just for drinking and cooking breakfast and coffee. So this worked out perfect for that. It actually made a big difference because I stored enough water. I didn't bring the whole pouch with me, so my pack was a lot lighter, which made it much easier for me to move throughout the day. The second thing I did better this trip, the clothes that I wore. I took the mentality of this is more of an athletic event to the point where I was wearing much lighter clothes, had my Under Armour spandex, and I had some hiking shorts over top of that with some pockets. And man, it made a big difference because I was just moving on this trail. Like the buddy that was with me was on my first trip as well. He even saw the difference in my steps because of my first hike, I was probably the last one and everybody was waiting for me to catch up to him. This time I was just charging forward. I felt light, I felt good, I was comfortable, and it really made a big difference. What I did with my camp clothes though, I just packed all those down into the bottom of my pack, so once I unload everything, I could put all my warm clothes back on. That way I wasn't gonna sweat, and that was my biggest fear because obviously we're kind of in a situation right now where I don't want to get sick with everything that's going on in the world right now, so I want to make sure I was as cautious as possible. So I didn't want to sweat on our hike. So I was definitely wearing much breathable clothing to get me through. And then once I got to my campsite, unpacked everything, put my tent up, because when you're still gathering around your campsite, you're still kind of moving and sweating. So I didn't start putting my layers on until after everything was set up and I was done moving. One thing that actually made the biggest difference on this hike compared to last time is this time I wore my trail runner shoes instead of my boots. Back to what I said before, I spent a lot of money starting this hobby by just buying all this most expensive gear, not really knowing the difference. When I wore my boots the first time, these things, I mean, these are good boots. These are expensive boots. These are the Vasquez. They're really comfortable. They worked well, but I don't really need these yet because we haven't really had that type of weather where I need boots. So I did my La Sportivas trail runners, and that really made a big difference on my hiking. My buddy was still wearing boots. He even learned himself this time. Next time he's gonna get some better shoes because it makes such a difference on your hike. So footwear makes a difference. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. The fourth thing I learned on this backpacking trip was how to pick your campsite. We were doing the Harpers Ferry Appalachian Trail, and our goal was to try to get to the water, but because we started late, we were at the point where we were gonna get to the water and have to find a campsite there, or we would just stop short and start setting up a good campsite before we got to the water, before the sun went down. I'm not experienced enough, nor do I really want to at this moment in time to set up at nighttime. I want to enjoy the time with my buddy, bro out, and create a good campsite and relax a little bit. So one thing to really take into consideration is the wind. It was really windy that day. We did this in January. It was already cold. It was going to get below freezing that night. And then with the wind that we had already that day, it was going to be a cold night. So we had to make sure that we picked a spot where that was had the most barrier to the wind. So we definitely went on the east side of the mountain. That way on the west, the wind would kind of shoot over a little bit. And it gives some type of barrier because all the trees were down. There was no really good bushy areas for us to kind of make a barrier. So we had to use the mountain at our advantage to help with that windbreak. And then speaking of the trees, it didn't dawn on me. I've heard this before, but my mind wasn't there because I was so excited about being outside and finding a campsite. But there was down trees everywhere. And we're like, oh, this is cool. Like, we don't have to worry about finding firewood. There's wood everywhere. Big branches all over the place. My buddy was just breaking branches between trees and making firewood for us. And it didn't really dawn on me until later on to probably check these trees that are surrounding us and make sure that there weren't going to be widowmakers and, fall on us. So I woke up the next morning. I was like, man, like, there's a bunch of dead trees everywhere. Like, this could have gone bad. So next time I go out, I'm gonna make sure I'm more thinking about the trees that are surrounding us. Luckily, the spot that we picked had a nice opening, which allowed for me to get some really good drone shots in the morning and that night, which really made this whole hiking day a lot of fun to be able to get really good shots too. And the fifth thing I learned is that expensive gear isn't always the answer. For Christmas, my girlfriend got me a REI Magma 15 down sleeping bag. I was super excited to get this sleeping bag. It's a pretty expensive bag, and I was really looking forward to using it in cold weather. Well, come to find out, in this particular case, the zipper broke on me, and all night long I am freezing, and I didn't understand why. Later in the night, why I was so cold is until I turned over and I was completely exposed because the zipper broke throughout the night. And I'm sitting there trying to zip it back up, and I'm trying to get the thing to catch, and it wasn't catching. And then there's like a third zipper, which is at the bottom. I don't know what this does. Maybe you guys do. But I was able to zip that up, but it wouldn't lock it. So I was sleeping like this, and anytime I would move an arm, it would just unzip, and eventually just get unzipping. And all night long, I'm just shivering cold, because again, it was still very windy on that mountain. Again, luckily we did pick a good spot where it wasn't as windy, but I was cold, guys. Like, that was probably the coldest night I've ever had sleeping outside. And you know what? I still loved it, but then I realized that sometimes even like the most expensive equipment, it could still fall on you while you're out there, and you have to be able to adapt and overcome those things. And that was my first really big moment where I'm like, this is not fun at all. And I made it out, and it was fine. I'm gonna go talk to REI, because REI is a really good store. They'll take care of you if you do have some faulty gear. So it was definitely an experience in its own to kind of be miserable. Something about being miserable and wake up the next day and being able to still be okay, But I will tell you this though, while I was kind of scrambling around trying to keep the zipper up, I do have this Thermarest ultralight sleeping pad. And you think I couldn't sleep because I was so cold? My buddy was having the hardest time trying to fall asleep because this thing is so freaking loud. I don't know what it is about it, but this thing is just obnoxiously loud. If you're ever afraid of bears, this thing is going to scare any type of animal away. My buddy is still having nightmares over the sound that thing makes of me going around trying to keep my sleeping bag up. So if you guys have any suggestions on a better sleeping pad that isn't so obnoxious, please leave a comment down below. I would love to know and check it out. And one of the last things I learned was bushcrafting. Bushcrafting is one of those things that we see, we watch on YouTube. Like, these guys are cool doing this stuff with the sticks and making things happen. And I never actually really got a chance to try it myself. The buddy that I was with, he's really crafty, he's really good with knife, and he's a really good outdoors person. So he was able to make a contraption just because we were bored and there's really nothing else to do. And he was able to make a contraption to cook and boil water with the hanging stick thing. You put the stick up and you cut it so it bounces, and put the notches in there so you can hang it. Really cool stuff. But it kind of dawned on us that at some point you might need to know how to do these things. Because what we had was the same canister that we used on our first backpack trip. I don't know how much gas is left in this thing. Luckily, there was enough to cook dinner and then coffee in the morning, then it was done. What if I had to boil some water? What would have my alternative been? So my tip really is, while you're out there and doing these things, like with your buddies or by yourself and you're watching these videos, go and take the things that you watched and try to implement them. On my next trip, I'm definitely going to start doing some cool bushcraft stuff just to learn. I never did Boy Scouts. I'm not too good with knots, but if I'm going to be doing these things, I feel like I probably should get a better understanding on how to do that in case it's a survival situation, or just because it's cool to do. And what else you can do? Sit around a fire for 4 hours before it gets cold and you have to go to bed. So with that, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. I got a couple more things coming up. I really want to do a snow camping trip and snow hiking trip. I'll see some good footage from me here in the future. Stay tuned to the channel for any type of adventures. I'm always going to be doing something outside, and I'm going to try to make content for you guys that's enjoyable. So hope you like this video. If you do, give some thumbs up and some kudos in the comments, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. See ya.